The compound sat in the darkness, silent and still. 3 stories of concrete and mystery, surrounded by walls twice the height of any neighbours. No lights escaped its windows, no sounds betrayed its occupants. In the military city of Abbottabad, Pakistan, just 800 yards from the nation's premier military academy, something was very, very wrong with the house at the end of the street. Inside, a tall man paced the 3rd-floor terrace in the midnight hour. He walked the same path every night, back and forth, always hidden from prying eyes by the high privacy walls. The man was thin now, greyer than in the videos that had made him the world's most wanted terrorist. But his eyes still burned with the same conviction that had driven him to orchestrate the deadliest attack on American soil in history. Osama bin Laden had no idea that, at that very moment, 8,000 miles away, in the White House Situation Room, the President of the United States was preparing to give an order that would end his life. May 1st, 2011. The hunt that had consumed a decade, cost trillions of dollars, and claimed thousands of lives was about to reach its conclusion. 23 Navy SEALs were preparing to board helicopters for a mission that would either make history or trigger a war with a nuclear-armed nation. This is the story of Operation Neptune Spear, the night that changed everything. It began on a Tuesday morning, a beautiful, clear September day in New York City. By 10:28 a.m., nearly 3,000 people were dead. The World Trade Center had collapsed into dust and horror, and the Pentagon was burning. In the rubble and chaos, investigators found a passport, then another. Flight manifests revealed names. Within hours, intelligence agencies had identified the architect of the attacks, a tall, soft-spoken Saudi exile living in the caves of Afghanistan. His name was Osama bin Laden. President George W. Bush's words were unequivocal. "We will find those responsible and bring them to justice." But finding bin Laden would prove far more difficult than anyone imagined. He wasn't just hiding, he had vanished into thin air. December 2001. American and Allied forces surrounded the Tora Bora cave complex in eastern Afghanistan, near the Pakistani border. Intelligence was solid. Bin Laden was there. Radio intercepts picked up his voice. Al-Qaeda fighters were defending the caves with suicidal determination. But the decision was made to rely on local Afghan militias rather than American troops to close the trap. It was a catastrophic mistake. On the night of December 16th, bin Laden and a small group of bodyguards slipped through the cordon, crossing into Pakistan's lawless tribal areas. He disappeared like a ghost. The trail went completely cold. For years, he seemed to have vanished from the earth itself. The CIA never stopped looking. In interrogation rooms at black sites across the globe, captured Al-Qaeda operatives were questioned. Most knew nothing. Some lied. A few provided fragments, tiny pieces of a puzzle that seemed impossible to solve. One detainee, under pressure, mentioned a courier, not a name, just a nickname. Abu Ahmed al-Kuwaiti, the Kuwaiti. According to the prisoner, this man was trusted enough to carry bin Laden's messages by hand. No phones, no computers. Medieval tradecraft in the 21st century. The CIA became obsessed with finding this ghost. Years passed. Analysts pored over intercepts, financial records, anything that might lead to the courier. It was like searching for a single grain of sand on a beach, but they never gave up. Then, in 2007, they caught a break. Another detainee confirmed the courier's existence. More importantly, he revealed that bin Laden's inner circle had tried to downplay the courier's importance, which meant he was probably critical. The hunt intensified. August 2010, a phone call. After years of silence, Abu Ahmed al-Kuwaiti made a mistake. He used a cell phone just once for a brief conversation, but it was enough. The NSA's vast surveillance network picked it up. Then another call, and another. Slowly, carefully, without alerting Pakistani intelligence, who might be sheltering bin Laden themselves, the CIA began to track him. They followed his white Suzuki sedan through the streets of Peshawar. They watched as he drove east toward Islamabad. And then, in late August, they followed him to Abbottabad. The compound had been built in 2005, the same year the trail to bin Laden had gone completely cold. It had cost approximately $1 million, far more than similar homes in the area. The walls were 12 to 18 feet high, topped with barbed wire. There were no phone lines, no internet connection. Trash was burned inside rather than collected, ensuring no DNA evidence ever left the property. And there was a third floor, unusual for the area. On that third floor was a terrace, surrounded by a 7-foot privacy wall, perfect for someone who needed to walk outside but could never be seen. CIA analysts watched the compound for months. Satellite imagery revealed something extraordinary. A tall man, approximately 6 feet 4 inches, bin Laden's exact height, who paced the courtyard every day, but never left. Never once. They nicknamed him the Pacer. By March 2011, CIA Director Leon Panetta was convinced. This was him. This was bin Laden. But conviction wasn't certainty. Intelligence analysts put the probability anywhere between 30 and 95%. Some were sure. Others had doubts. The house had been watched for months, but they'd never gotten a clear look at the Pacer's face. President Obama faced an agonizing decision. Launch a raid deep into Pakistan, a nuclear-armed, unstable ally that could kill American troops and damage critical relationships. Or do nothing, and potentially lose the world's most wanted man forever. He ordered JSOC, Joint Special Operations Command, to prepare options. 3 plans emerged. First, level the compound with B-2 bombers. Clean, definitive, but no proof of death and guaranteed civilian casualties. Second, coordinate with Pakistani forces. Diplomatically safe, but Pakistani intelligence was compromised. Any warning meant bin Laden would vanish again. Third option, send in the Navy SEALs. Obama chose the Warriors. DevGru, Development Group, the unit formerly known as SEAL Team 6, America's most elite counterterrorism force. The men who get called when the mission is impossible. 23 operators were selected. They trained at a full-scale replica of the compound, built in North Carolina. Every door, every room, every possible scenario wargamed until it became muscle memory. What if there's resistance? What if there are civilians? What if bin Laden is armed? What if Pakistani jets scramble? They rehearsed everything. Because in Spec Ops, there's no room for improvisation. You train until the mission becomes automatic. Then you train some more. The raid was scheduled for the first night of the new moon, maximum darkness. 2 modified Black Hawk helicopters would carry the assault team. 2 massive Chinook helicopters would wait just across the Afghan border as backup and quick reaction force. Time on target, 30 minutes maximum. Any longer, and Pakistani jets would arrive. April 29th, Obama gave the final authorization. The raid would proceed on May 1st, almost exactly 10 years after the World Trade Center fell. One final decision remained: inform Pakistan or not? His national security team was split. Informing Pakistan was the diplomatic approach, honoring the alliance. But Pakistan's IISI intelligence service had a history of sheltering Taliban leaders. If anyone warned bin Laden, 10 years of work would evaporate in minutes. Obama made the call. Pakistan would learn about the raid when it was over. May 1st, 2011, 11 p.m. local time, Jalalabad Airfield, Afghanistan. The two Black Hawks lifted off into the darkness. 23 SEALs, a translator, and a combat dog named Cairo. Each man checked his equipment one final time. Night vision goggles, suppressed weapons, breaching charges, medical gear. Each man knew his role. Teams assigned to floors, to rooms. Rules of engagement were crystal clear. Bin Laden was to be killed on sight. No capture, no negotiation. This ended tonight. The flight would take 90 minutes. 90 minutes to cross into Pakistan, flying low to avoid radar. 90 minutes to think about what waited at the end. Some men prayed. Others checked their rifles again, though they'd already checked them a dozen times. A few closed their eyes, trying to rest before the chaos. None of them spoke about what could go wrong. In their line of work, you don't dwell on failure. You train to succeed, and you trust your brothers. The Black Hawks screamed across the Pakistani countryside at treetop level, invisible to radar, nearly silent to anyone below. The pilots flew using night vision, navigating by GPS, and sheer skill. One error, one miscalculation, and the helicopters would slam into a mountainside. They flew past Pakistani military installations, past towns where people slept, unaware that history was passing overhead, past the military academy in Abbottabad itself. At 12:30 a.m., the helicopters descended on the compound. That's when everything went wrong. The first Black Hawk, attempting to hover above the compound for fast rope insertion, encountered an aerodynamic phenomenon the pilots hadn't anticipated. The high walls created a vortex, a heat sink that robbed the helicopter of lift. In a split second, the pilot realized they were falling. He made a decision that saved every life aboard. Instead of fighting for control and crashing catastrophically, he guided the helicopter into a controlled crash into the compound's animal pen. The tail struck the wall. The Black Hawk rolled. Its rotor barely missed the SEALs packed inside. Metal screamed, dust exploded, and then silence. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Then training took over. Go! 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 The SEALs poured out of the downed helicopter, weapons raised, moving with the precision of a machine. The element of surprise was gone. The crash could be heard across Abbottabad. But the mission continued. They had minutes, maybe less. Pakistani forces would be mobilizing now. Breaching charges blew the doors open with muffled thumps. The SEALs entered in tactical formation, flowing through the compound like water, clearing rooms with practiced efficiency. First floor. A figure appeared. Ahmed al-Kuwaiti, the courier who'd led them here, raising an AK-47. 2 suppressed shots. He dropped. His wife, used as a shield, took a bullet in the leg but survived. Second floor. Another defender emerged, weapon in hand. The SEALs cut him down before he could fire. Then they reached the stairs to the third floor. This was it. This was why they'd come 8,000 miles, why they'd trained for months, why they were risking war with Pakistan. They climbed. At the top of the stairs, a tall figure appeared in a doorway. The SEAL at point recognized the height, the build, the face they'd studied in hundreds of photographs. Time compressed, training overrode thought. 3 shots. 2 struck. 1 to the chest, 1 to the head above the left eye. Osama bin Laden fell without firing a shot. The man who'd planned the deaths of 3,000 innocents on September 11th was dead. Geronimo E.K.I.A. Enemy killed in action. The message flashed to the White House. In the Situation Room, 8,000 miles away, President Obama exhaled for what felt like the first time in hours. But the mission wasn't over. 12:39 a.m. 14 minutes since the helicopter crash. Pakistani forces were now fully mobilized. F-16 fighters were scrambling from Islamabad, 60 miles away. The SEALs had perhaps 10 minutes before those jets arrived. While half the team secured the compound and gathered intelligence, every computer, every hard drive, every scrap of paper that might reveal Al-Qaeda's secrets, the other half prepared for extraction. The crashed Black Hawk couldn't fly. Standard protocol: destroy it with thermite grenades so the stealth technology wouldn't fall into foreign hands. The backup Chinook, which had been waiting across the border, was called in. It would have to land outside the compound walls to fit everyone. One of the SEALs measured bin Laden's body to confirm the height. Another took DNA samples. A third photographed the face from every angle. Whatever happened next, they weren't leaving without proof. 12:53 a.m. Pakistani F-16s were en route, minutes away. The SEALs moved bin Laden's body into a heavy-duty bag, loaded the last of the intelligence. Thermite grenades turned the downed Black Hawk into a blazing inferno, its classified technology destroyed. 1:05 a.m. 35 minutes after insertion, the last SEAL boarded the Chinook. The helicopters lifted off, engines screaming, racing for the Afghan border. Behind them, the compound burned. Ahead, Pakistani jets closed the distance. It would be close. The Chinook crossed into Afghan airspace just as Pakistani F-16s reached Abbottabad. The Pakistanis found a compound in ruins, a helicopter's burning skeleton, and 1,000 questions. The Americans were gone. May 1st, 2011, 11:35 p.m. Washington time, morning in Pakistan. President Obama walked to the podium in the White House. The address had been hastily arranged. Rumors were already spreading on social media. The secret couldn't be kept much longer. Good evening. Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda, and a terrorist who's responsible for the murder of thousands of innocent men, women, and children. Within minutes, the news exploded across the globe. In New York, crowds gathered spontaneously at Ground Zero, chanting, "USA! USA!" People embraced strangers. Some wept. For many who'd lost loved ones on September 11th, this was a moment they'd feared would never come. Justice, delayed for nearly a decade, had finally been served. The SEALs had collected a treasure trove of intelligence from the compound. Computers, hard drives, memory sticks, handwritten journals. Over there, decades worth of Al-Qaeda communications and planning. And the DNA confirmed what the SEALs already knew. The man they'd killed was Osama bin Laden. Facial recognition matched. Height matched. The evidence was overwhelming. His body was prepared according to Islamic tradition, then buried at sea from the aircraft carrier USS Carl Vinson. No grave, no shrine, no place for his followers to martyr him. He was gone, erased from the earth as thoroughly as he'd erased the lives of his victims. In Islamabad, the reaction was furious. Pakistan's government condemned the raid as a violation of sovereignty. How dare the Americans conduct a military operation on Pakistani soil without permission? But the questions cut both ways. How had bin Laden lived for years in Abbottabad, practically next door to Pakistan's military academy, without anyone noticing? Either Pakistan's intelligence services were spectacularly incompetent, or they'd been sheltering him all along. The US-Pakistan relationship, already strained, never fully recovered. The alliance that had been central to the war on terror was irreparably damaged. But for the families of September 11th victims, for the soldiers who'd hunted bin Laden through the mountains of Afghanistan, the diplomatic fallout was secondary. The man responsible for so much death was finally gone. The mission had succeeded beyond anyone's reasonable expectations. Not a single SEAL was killed or even seriously injured. The controlled crash of the Black Hawk, which could have been catastrophic, had resulted in nothing worse than bruises. But the larger war on terror had exacted a terrible price. Nearly 7,000 American service members dead in Iraq and Afghanistan, tens of thousands wounded, trillions of dollars spent, hundreds of thousands of civilians caught in the crossfire. And bin Laden's death, while symbolically enormous, didn't end Al-Qaeda. The organization splintered, morphed, gave birth to even more extreme groups like ISIS. The war would continue. But on that night, none of that mattered. For one night, there was closure. The 23 SEALs who conducted the raid returned to anonymity. That's how Spec Ops works. No glory, no recognition. Just the mission and the knowledge that you did your job. Years later, some would speak publicly. Books would be written, the raid would be dramatized in films. Arguments would rage about what should and shouldn't be revealed. But on the night of May 2nd, 2011, they were just warriors who'd completed the most important mission of their lives. They'd hunted the world's most wanted terrorist for a decade, crossed into hostile territory, survived a helicopter crash, killed their target, and escaped without a single friendly casualty. In the world of special operations, it doesn't get better than that. The compound in Abbottabad was demolished in 2012. Today, nothing remains but an empty lot. The house where history was made has been erased as thoroughly as the man who hid there. But the legacy of Operation Neptune Spear endures. It proved that no terrorist, no matter how carefully hidden, is beyond reach. It demonstrated what a small team of elite warriors can accomplish when skill, training, and courage converge. And it provided a measure of justice for the nearly 3,000 souls who died on September 11, 2001. Their deaths were not forgotten. Their murderer was hunted to the ends of the earth. On a moonless night in May, in a compound in Pakistan, 23 men proved something essential. That evil, no matter how patient or careful, will eventually be found. And when it is, justice, delayed but never denied, will be served. This was Operation Neptune Spear, the night that changed everything.